Welcome to the Lethbridge Sport Council SCORE Workshop Series and the Volunteer Management 101 Workshop. We gratefully acknowledge course development assistance from Richard Larson with the Community Engagement and Inclusion Branch with Alberta Culture and Community Services. We also sincerely thank Jim McNally with the Commercial Factory for filming and producing the video segments. In this workshop, you'll learn the details of volunteer management. While it isn't difficult, it does go beyond putting a general call out to the public and having hordes of volunteers showing up at your event. You'll take a close look at how welcoming your group is to new people, how to build and develop your organization's volunteer workforce and support these key people, as well as further develop the human resource element of your team or club. We'll touch on motivations and why people volunteer, and take you step by step through the volunteer process, from recruitment strategies to training, recognition, and retention. You'll learn about financial accountability and transparency and what steps to take to avoid fraud and loss prevention. We will also explore how to avoid fundraising burnout, how to engage your volunteers and break down those barriers to getting people involved. You'll come away from the workshop with real ideas and access to handouts you can take back to your organization. You'll hear examples from people within our very own community and be well on your way to success. And of course, everything we do throughout this workshop will have a specific sport focus and a local Lethbridge flavor. Why do you need volunteers? Quite simply, volunteers are the life of sport. According to the City of Lethbridge's Sport and Recreation Policy, nearly 75% of sport and recreation organizations do not have paid staff and rely heavily on volunteers. They are a vital structural component. With the organizations that do employ staff, there is a low number of paid staff. A 2005 study of the Sport Medicine and Science Council of Canada indicates there is no question that sport cannot operate in this country without the total substructure of volunteers. But many times, groups are run by a close group of just a few people. They may desperately need more helping hands, but don't always make the effort to review the organization's needs or take the time to talk to other people to really define their purpose. Maybe your sport organization has difficulty recruiting new volunteers. Here are some questions to ask each group member to honestly answer. Right now, on a sheet of paper, make a check mark if you feel your group's actions positively reflect what the following questions ask you. If you feel your sport organization falls short, make an X. Openness. Does your group make extra efforts to bring different people into the group? Does your group make an effort to ensure new volunteers feel welcome? Does your group realize what is turning people away from working with your organization? Does your group and the work it does still meet your participants' needs? Does your group take time to review the participants' needs, even if this means taking a break from current work to look around and gather information? Does your group talk to people other than those currently involved with the group to find out what they expect of you? Does your group listen to people's suggestions and consider new ideas? Is your organization willing to try out new ideas and test different approaches? Do you take chances and small risks, even if it means possible failure? Does your group ensure that everyone feels part of the team and feels they belong? Do you recognize the different and unique efforts made by each individual? Does your group offer everyone opportunities to make decisions and take on leadership roles? Getting the message out. Does every volunteer in your group describe the group's purpose the same way, using consistent key messages? Communicating within your group. Is information shared between volunteers and leaders in your group in order to avoid confusion and misunderstandings? Do the leaders in your group work well together and share the workload? Planning for the future. Does your sport organization consider how to work as a team in order to advance your organization's mission and foster the growth of future leaders? Volunteers who feel valued and know they are contributing to a well-organized group will stay longer. Their energy and commitment may also inspire others to participate. Teamwork, open communication, openness, and respect all contribute to a healthy organization. Now take a moment and add up the check marks and X's that you use to indicate your impression and opinion of your sport organization's openness towards volunteers and willingness to use their strengths. Don't worry if you have lots of X's. That's why the Lethbridge Sport Council developed this workshop. For any check marks that indicate your group is on track to best utilize your volunteers, congratulate yourself and the team you work with. Any additional hints and tips you take from this workshop will only serve to further strengthen and grow your organization. Here's a story you may be able to relate to. As unfortunate situations like this are, I'm sure nearly everyone has had a similar scenario happen to them. John shows up at the golf course to help out with the annual golf fundraising tournament. He arrives at the volunteer check-in only to find that the person on duty does not have his name on any list and has no knowledge of what John is to do. He's told to go check with the guy over there on the stage. The stage manager is frantically trying to repair signage and has no time to deal with the new volunteer. John feels completely frustrated and discouraged. Take a snapshot of your group through the eyes of your members and volunteers. Each box here is part of the equation as you work toward making sure your sport organization is volunteer friendly. The main challenge for a sport organization is to recruit and train the right people to get the job done. While there isn't a magical or instant solution to find and retain the right people, there are tips and tricks to help make your sport organization attract new people and keep them involved. Plan ahead. Think about what your group needs to do and get the job done. Be sure to involve everyone in this stage. Set goals and find ways to achieve them. Identify the skills, abilities, and talents to accomplish the work, as well as who can take on the different tasks or who you need to recruit to help out. When developing a recruitment strategy, make a list of everyone you could approach and ask the others in your group to add to your list. Figure out where you'll find the people you're looking for. For example, if you have a weekend tournament or meet, you may want to look for students who need community volunteer hours. If you have a board position to fill, you may want to look for a new retiree who used to have children in that sport. What do volunteers need to get the job done? It's important to offer the right orientation and training. You can probably remember a time when you started a new job and weren't given a full orientation, and maybe even told to just sort through things and search on your own. It's important to give people all the material and information they need to do the job. Check in with the volunteers to make sure they're having a positive experience. While your sport organization probably doesn't have the time or desire to supervise and provide volunteer evaluations, it's important to let the individual know if they are on track or identify responsibilities in their scope of work that you hope they take on. Recognition and motivation. Contributions, talent, and skills all need to be recognized. Provide a heartfelt thank you when it's warranted, letting them know why you value their work and involvement with your group. This can be done formally or informally. Celebrate your people and your successes, big and small. I can think of a volunteer coordinator position I held where I was responsible for 9 facilities within a large geographical base. These facilities were solely run by volunteers. Shortly after I was hired, I did a trip to each facility, and after introducing myself, thanked the volunteers for their time and commitment, not only from the bottom of my heart, but also on behalf of the organization. At one facility, I was told in over a decade of volunteerism that was the first time she had ever been thanked from someone in the organization. I was simply astonished. These volunteers were the reason the program and facilities existed. Without them, there would be absolutely no funds for staffing and everything would be shut down. To be fair, it was probably an oversight on the organization having missed opportunities to thank the volunteers. It is a huge organization with regionally staffed offices, but due to geographical constraints, face-to-face visits were infrequent. So ask for input and feedback, listen to suggestions, and identify what could have been done differently to help you succeed. Written job descriptions help an organization think in advance about how to provide volunteers with opportunities to contribute that are both challenging and rewarding. A job description should be prepared for every volunteer position, no matter how big or small. The advantage of written job descriptions is that the duties, expectations, and responsibilities of both the volunteer and the organization are outlined clearly, Knowing the requirements of individual volunteer jobs in advance simplifies the selection, recruitment, and management of volunteers. Now, would you apply for a paid position without knowing what your day-to-day duties and responsibilities would be? Don't you think you want to know if you're qualified enough, or even overqualified, as well as a good match for the position before putting your name forward? The same goes for volunteer positions. Here's a sample chart of volunteer roles that your sport organization may need. Of course, you won't need all of these roles filled all of the time. For example, during a special event, your human resource requirements substantially increase. During regular season, you probably have a smaller core group of individuals that work to ensure the season is running smoothly and efficiently. Other roles, such as the board member positions, meet regularly to ensure the sport organization's plan is on track, as well as to identify and address problems and move forward with new programs and ideas. Online, you can find numerous templates for roles and job descriptions. Modify it so that it suits the personality of your sport organization and the type of volunteer you're looking for. Even if you don't have a very detailed and lengthy job description for your volunteers, it's still important to identify several key points. Name the organization or the program that the volunteer will be working with. The role title. Be creative. Make the title appealing to your audience. Avoid using simply volunteer as a job title. The purpose should clearly state how this job relates to the organization and its goals. Cover the expectations, responsibilities, and be sure to list the specific duties. When? Outline the time requirements. How much time exactly will this role require? Be specific about the hours and whether they're flexible or not. What level of commitment is expected? If you know the dates, provide that information. Why we want you. What's in it for you? What kind of commitment do we want from you? You figure that out, what your sport organization is looking for, and make sure you list that. The skills you need. List the essential skills or qualifications that are required for this job. Does the role require first aid qualifications? Do volunteers need to have computer or technical skills? Do the volunteers need just a positive attitude and the ability to learn? Be really specific about what you're looking for. Outline the orientation and training. Does this job require training? What is it? When will it happen? And is it provided free of cost to the volunteer? Make sure you have some notes in there, like what the volunteers get out of being with your organization. And of course, for more information, who to contact. I understand all too well the relief when someone takes on a role and helps lighten the workload. The last thing you want to do is scare off someone with a screening process. But screening is important to maintain a safe environment for your organization and everyone involved. Your sport organization has the obligation to take reasonable measures to keep everyone safe. It doesn't mean you don't trust the person. It means that you're taking responsibility for your own role within the organization and on behalf of the organization to reduce liability and risk factors. It's important to understand that police record checks create a false sense of security. Looking up a name on a list will not keep the vulnerable sector, including kids, seniors, and disabled people, safe. Protecting children and stopping abuse is everyone's responsibility. The National Education Campaign on Screening's third phase focuses on training people to screen volunteers in sport and recreation. These groups use known volunteers. They work with middle-class, mainstream kids. They're tight communities and in a severe state of denial when it comes to screening. While this might sound like a broad generalization, I think you can probably agree that it's true to a large extent. A screening policy should be a safeguard from all possible risks, not just child abuse. I'll give you a minute here to read an article published in the Lethbridge Herald on January 25, 2012. It hits close to home since it happened to a Lethbridge sport organization and involved people from within our own community. Those who are members of the Bowbenders Archery Club were drastically affected by the actions of one of their own members. Don't be intimidated by the following steps to screening a potential applicant, but it is important to incorporate this process into your policies. Once the initial framework has been established, you won't need to repeat all the steps for other volunteer roles or for filling the same position in the future. So spend some time now writing a clear description, establishing a formal recruitment process, creating an application form, writing interview questions, and coming up with the orientation and training guidelines. Why do people volunteer? Typically, people volunteer to help the community and others. Helping others usually comes to mind first when people think of volunteers. But as you see when you read deeper into this list, their motives aren't always this simple. Increase self-esteem. Volunteering makes people feel better about themselves. Help out friends. Friends are often the first people we turn to when we need help. Volunteering can also create a great way to get together with friends on a regular basis. Make new friends. Volunteering is usually a social activity, and people use this opportunity to meet interesting people who share their interests and values. Try out a job. People considering a job in the field often discover that volunteering is a good way to get a peek at what happens on the inside. Polish their resumes. Adding volunteer experience to a resume shows a commitment to helping others or to working in a particular field. Develop new skills. A volunteer job often gives people an opportunity to learn how to do something they didn't know how to do. Enjoy something they love. Many volunteer jobs come with intrinsic benefits for their participants. Ushers at the symphony get to hear the music. Gardeners removing invasive plants from a native plant preserve get to spend a day in a beautiful natural setting. However, the above examples are taken from an article that doesn't talk about sport specifically. Remember at the beginning of the workshop when I referred to volunteers as the life of sport, where nearly 75% of sport and recreation organizations do not have paid staff and rely heavily on volunteers. While the above reasons definitely come into play with sport volunteers, quite simply, if those people weren't there, the sport wouldn't happen. Without volunteers to coach, where would that leave the children? Without parents to make their phone number and email address available to the public, how would others register for the sport? Without a group of people coming together to plan the tournament, how else would our children get to play against teams from outside the city? This is where STP comes in, otherwise known as the same 3 people, or the same 10 people as in the case of larger sport organizations. Think of your volunteer experiences, whether it's with a sport organization, school, church group, or other community group. Chances are you'll have been involved at some time with a group where the same group of people does the majority of the work. If it's a small group or organization, it's probably safe to say the same 3 people, our STP abbreviation, or in a larger scale organization, probably has the same 10 people doing the majority of the workload. Did you know that a small portion of all volunteers in Canada contribute over 3/4 of all the volunteer hours? Look around the community and see it's often the same people volunteering for the soccer club, the hockey club, the community fun day, and the church bazaar. It's fantastic to see such commitment and dedication, but along with their volunteer involvement, there's a great danger: volunteer burnout. Recent research indicates 4 top retention strategies. Ensure the volunteer gets more than they give. Create a quality volunteer experience. Develop a true believer in the cause. Provide organizational support. Most of all, make sure your volunteers are on the happy end of the spectrum rather than running away from lending a hand. Lori talks about understanding volunteer motivation and recognition. Why do people donate? Everyone has different reasons for donating money or time to a fundraising initiative, and these reasons can differ depending upon the type of fundraiser, time of year, and personal circumstances. Reasons range from feeling pressure to donate to someone feeling that the donation will benefit their own personal image. Yes, that may be selfish, but remember, everyone has their own reasons. They may not care about your organization but want to participate in the fundraiser itself. For example, if your organization is hosting a huge rock concert with proceeds to go back to your organization, someone may not really care where the proceeds go to if the performer is someone who they really enjoy listening to. They will attend the concert regardless of where the money goes. Moving to the other end of the spectrum, someone may feel it's a good deal. You may be approaching them with a Purdy's chocolate order form. It's late November and they haven't started Christmas shopping yet. Here's the perfect opportunity for this person to get a number of people on their shopping list checked off in a convenient and simple way. Perhaps the individual feels a sense of closeness to the organization. Maybe they used to play basketball as a child, and participating in the fundraiser or donating money brings back good memories of personal experiences. Some individuals and businesses in town are continually asked to support various community groups. While most businesses are inundated with requests, they find it important to get involved locally and will make every effort to help a group out. I encourage you to move further and find untapped supporters, as there are a number of consumers in the community not being reached. For example, young married couples without kids are often bringing in two incomes and have extra disposable funds. They may not be approached simply because they aren't involved in local youth sports yet. Try to find a means to reach out to this demographic, and you might find them responsive to your request. Older couples that don't yet have grandchildren are similar to the first example. Both husband and wife may be working, their children are not living at home anymore, and they may have the means to support your fundraiser. Single people without family expenses and bills are often willing to help support and donate. Tapping into these demographics and asking for their support may open doors to a relatively untapped but beneficial market. Now, how often do you respond and offer your time when you see an ad or an email for a group needing volunteers? Probably not that often. Now think about a time when you were approached and asked if you'd be able to help out with a certain task on a certain day. You were told the specifics of what needed to be done and when. You were told that your help was needed, and I'll bet you most likely took on that role. When recruiting volunteers, it's important to make it known you need help and to ask specifically. Many people don't offer their time as they don't think the call is directed at them. Simply put, present your need and ask. So in your direct ask, whether it's a personal phone call or conversation, or through an email or an ad in the newspaper, be sure to include what sort of volunteer you need, the time commitment involved, experience needed, if you'll train on the spot, and any perks to accepting the position. Now here's a hint. People are much more likely to say yes if they know there'll be food involved. So remember your organization's role in volunteer comfort and care, and make sure you plan to provide food and drink for them. Other benefits may include free admission to the event, volunteer t-shirts, or goodie bags. Make sure you collect the appropriate contact information and paperwork, such as the criminal record check, from your new recruits. How many times have you seen a help wanted or volunteers needed sign? Not too eye-catching, is it? You probably skim the title and move on. Catch a reader's attention with a good opening. Here are some creative one-liners. The key to each of these examples is they are condensed and understandable. Volunteer recruitment is like dating, and you don't want to ask for marriage on the first date. Yes, you'd like a long-term commitment, but don't scare off the person by coming on too strong. Take time to ensure the volunteer is a good fit for your sport organization and that your organization provides fulfillment for what the volunteer is looking for. Let them get a taste of what your sport organization is all about, and make sure that volunteer leaves wanting to come back. Now, the goal of the first date is to tell volunteers you'd like their help. Specifically, present your need and ask. Many people you've come across are professionals and would love to share their knowledge. So share your own expectations and have roles available the volunteer can fill. Present the complete picture. Don't do a bait and switch on the volunteer, or you'll end up potentially losing them. Pretend you're directing a motion picture. Think of the needs your sport organization has and think whether the volunteer job can help fill that need. Address any hesitations or concerns the potential volunteer might have, including the biggest one. Will I be capable of helping with it? You probably wouldn't be having the conversation with that person if you didn't feel they were the right person for the role. So alleviate those fears. Benefits. What's in it for me? Let them know the needs of your sport organization and how you feel they'd be a great fit to help out. Aside from the intrinsic benefits of donating time to a group who could really appreciate it, are there any other tangible benefits you can provide? Again, food and recognition are key points. Contact. How does someone get involved? There's nothing worse than trying to find out more information and not being able to find a phone number or email address, or leaving messages only to have no one ever return that call. Lori explains tactics and ideas on how to engage and keep volunteers happy and motivated. Don't be misunderstood. Avoid jargon, acronyms, and wording that only individuals directly involved in the industry would know. There's nothing more frustrating than not understanding what it means. It's highly unlikely that your call for help will elicit responses from individuals outside of your particular field. Test your message. Make sure the group you're targeting will understand it and that it will appeal to their interests. Make the message inviting. Your sport organization is actively looking to recruit volunteers, so make your message appealing and welcoming. Would you want to volunteer for an organization that comes across as cold and impersonal? Or worse yet, you have to respond to a generic email or phone number? It's a great opening to identify the name of the individual to contact for more information. It's a small detail, but it's the personal touch that can go a long way in developing a personal rapport with people. Ways to ensure your volunteers fail. Rather than me telling you how to treat a volunteer, I'll give you a few minutes to read through this tongue-in-cheek article on how to fail with me. Don't think about your volunteers individually. Assume everyone you ask to serve will stick around to the very end. Don't allow people to tell you where they want to serve. Give them a task with no instruction, expectations, or feedback, and expect them to hang themselves. I think we probably have all stood around at some point feeling like a useless third wheel. If people are doing their job well, don't worry too much about their personal and professional lives. Just make up the rules as the project grows. Distinguish too much between staff and volunteers. Keep volunteers in their current roles, even if it's the wrong fit. Direct the program from your ivory tower. Consider volunteer job descriptions are passé. Daytime volunteers. When you think of daytime volunteers, middle-aged adult volunteers probably jump to mind. But really, normal work hours are relative, and there are many jobs that require people to work shift work, which opens them up to the possibility of volunteering for your organization during the day. Many people work shifts which may be 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. or 3 to 11 p.m. rather than the typical 9 to 5 workday. If you can target workplaces close to your sport organization, your recruitment pitch can be help us out on your way to or from work with very little extra commuting. Evening workers often sleep late after a long night at work, but may be potential volunteers in the afternoon. Weekend workers whose jobs include Saturday and/or Sunday shifts will have their days off during the week. Odd jobs and flexible work shift schedules are also a great target market to connect with. Some employed people work on changing, inconsistent, or temporary schedules, and these people can be an excellent resource for volunteer roles where it's the result you need, not a regular volunteer shift to be covered. Be creative in the job markets you explore, as well as in your approach, and you just might end up with a fantastic volunteer to fit a niche you previously thought you wouldn't be able to fill. Advertise and promote your need for volunteers. In addition to the standard and expected advertising methods, reach out and try all sorts of ideas. The more ways you reach out, the more connections you're likely to make. Here are some samples of free or nearly free methods of promotion. Think of the Lethbridge Sport Council. We can put the call out for volunteers for you on our website, on our Facebook page, Twitter account, flyers in our office and community room, and also advertise in our monthly e-newsletter. Use the local media, which includes newspapers, radio, TV, various websites, buy and sell sites, and community announcements. Local organizations such as Volunteer Lethbridge and other Lethbridge Sport Council partners have been fantastic with helping spread the word. Don't underestimate the power of social media. It's free and it has a widespread reach. If you're not internet or tech savvy, talk to us here at the Lethbridge Sport Council and we can help you get started. Here are 7 deadly sins of volunteer recruitment. The first sin: expect announcements to get volunteers. After making announcements, writing articles, giving plugs in other meetings, and a special mail-out, results are very disappointing. What was wrong? After going to lunch with a person who is a mover and shaker and asking, "Why didn't you volunteer for this project? I could see your name on it all the way." I'll never forget his response. He said, "If you wanted me, why didn't you ask? I'd be happy to work with you on this project, but I would never volunteer." Sin 2: go it alone. You need to meet, brainstorm, and share. Establish a recruiting task force. Sin number 3: recruit lifetime individuals, not short-term project teams. Recruiting teams rather than individuals is particularly effective with younger volunteers. Many people are afraid of getting tied into a job for a lifetime and never being able to get out of it. They get burned out and then quit the organization as a way to quit their volunteer role. Accomplish 3 objectives when putting together a short-term project team of new volunteers with a model leader. Objective number 1: volunteers are more willing to say yes to a short-term commitment with an end date in sight. Objective 2: volunteers have the opportunity to catch the vision of the organization because they are working with a passionate leader. Number 3: leaders become mentors for future passion-driven teams. Everybody's always looking for new leadership. Sin number 4: assume that no means never. Timing is everything. When we get the courage to recruit someone and they say no, we often feel rejected. There's often more to not accepting the job. For example, I needed someone to be the head of a tournament committee, and I felt that Bob was the perfect person. But when I asked him, he declined. He explained to me about a former business partner who was suing him, a teenage son who was giving him problems, and his vehicle that was leaking oil. He just couldn't see doing justice to the position. But when asked the following year, he was all too excited to fill the position. So sometimes the no means not now, or maybe there's something else they'd rather do in the organization but were never asked. Sin 5: fall into the BIC trap. We often fall into the trap of following the BIC syndrome. Because we're desperate in need for a volunteer and needed them quickly, we plead our case to anyone who fogs a mirror, and at the last minute you get somebody to be a butt in the chair. Most times the chair is better empty than filled with the wrong person who does nothing or who is high maintenance. Sin 6. Be people-driven rather than position-driven. Another variation of the butt in the chair method is just to say, please come and be part of our group. We have a great time and we need your expertise. But we don't tell the prospective volunteer what we want them to do. Joan was recruited by the board to help out with minor baseball. She loved to do behind-the-scenes work and pictured herself as a social coordinator, planning fun nights and team challenges. But she was placed on the finance committee at the first meeting and was asked to go out and raise money. Although she had passion for the cause, she was overwhelmed, disappointed, and quit. When you look at the volunteer team, think position and ask, what positions do I need to accomplish our mission? What do I want the team members to do? And then look for people who can fill those positions. Sin 7. Give the position the wrong job title. What's in a name? Plenty. By calling volunteers by the wrong name, it sends the wrong message to the sport organization. They come to the job volunteering with the wrong credentials and the wrong expectations. It's just a poor fit and poor experience for everyone. The ask. Explain the positions available. What would be the best fit for their talent and interest? Encourage and help create a motivating environment. Keep in touch. Call and let them know their involvement is appreciated. If it's a one-time event, make it known that there are no strings attached. This is a one-time volunteer event. Get to know the organization's mission, vision, and plans. Educate your volunteers about the work your sport organization does. Training and development are vital parts of a good volunteer management program. Volunteers who are offered some form of training, whether it's formal or informal, are more confident, comfortable, and efficient in their role, and everyone benefits from that. As a simple exercise to help demonstrate the value of volunteers, add up how many hours are contributed by volunteers at an event. For example, how many people are involved in planning a tournament or competition? Count the number of planning meetings as well as hours contributed by individuals as they each complete their tasks and responsibilities. How many hours are spent promoting and registering individuals or teams for the event and answering questions? Add up the hours you spend asking for donations and sponsorship, putting together the event program, recruiting and training officials and volunteers, organizing food, concession, and raffle draws. How many hours are used for setting up the event? What about on the day of the event? How many people are working hard throughout the entire day to ensure the tournament is a success? Then, count the takedown hours and follow-up hours. I think you get my point. Literally, hundreds of hours are invested in organizing a tournament or competition. Now, what if you assigned a salary to those hours? Some of the jobs would be valued at $15 an hour, while others at $20 an hour. So needless to say, the time commitment and contributions by volunteers are priceless. And this is just for a one-time tournament. It doesn't count all the hours invested by individuals in promoting the club, taking registrations, ordering team gear, conducting board meetings, website management, dealing with paperwork, finances, and insurance. Imagine if you had to pay out all those hours for work that's currently being done by volunteers. Have you said thank you lately to your volunteers? Having your volunteers track their hours worked not only gives your organization a good sense of the job responsibilities, but it also gives an indication where you need to recruit more help to assist in certain areas. Also, there are grant opportunities available that are done on a matching basis. When volunteer hours are converted to salary, it can be identified as a gift in kind and used as a figure on the grant application. So reporting these volunteer contributions are essential in securing funding. As well, funders, donors, and the community want to know that you have people in place to get the job done well. Volunteers do not expect lots of thanks and big hugs, but they really appreciate it when their contribution is valued and recognized. Here are just a few easy and cost-effective ways to say thank you to your volunteers. Lori reiterates the importance of volunteers understanding why what they're doing is beneficial to the overall organization. Maintaining a stable group of long-term volunteers is the goal of all sport and recreation organizations. A stable volunteering base reduces recruiting time and cost, reduces training time, and provides an important sense of continuity within the organization. However, there's going to be a time that you'll have to replace volunteers. But how you manage this replacement process is important to improve how you manage remaining volunteers and your volunteer management program, and make that transition of volunteers have as little impact as possible on the running of the organization. When a volunteer leaves your organization, this is an ideal time to gather information about the volunteer's experience. Evaluating the reasons why volunteers leave an organization can be invaluable for improving your volunteer management practices. One way to collect this information is by getting feedback from volunteers who are leaving your organization, or exit interviews. These can be formal or informal, conducted in person, over the phone, or in the form of a feedback sheet that the person can complete and return by email. Although this may seem a lot of work, you have to ask yourself the question, aren't your volunteers worth it? It is said that in some industries, the indicators of fraud are on the rise, in part due to new technologies and declining business ethics, and there certainly have been more sport-related fraud cases recently. Sport administrators and boards are urged to trust their intuition when something does not seem right, and to err on the side of caution by investigating further. Remember, risk management is organized common sense, and some of the most effective risk management measures are those that are intuitively simple and practical. Your sport organization board ultimately has an oversight responsibility and should take steps to ensure controls are in place and enforced. One of the topics people find difficult to address within their sport organization are discussions centered on fraud and embezzlement. No one wants to insinuate that they don't trust other board or club members, but it's essential for protection of the board, of the organization, and of the individual club members to address this. Embezzlement is the stealing of money or property for one's own use in which it violated the trust between the victim and the embezzler. There are enormous and severe consequences of embezzlement. Huge fines or fines in lieu, a criminal record, prison, probation, restitution, and civil forfeiture. With the risk of such huge consequences, why do people steal? Why would someone take funds or products from their own organization? There are several main reasons. Financial reasons. In today's economy, it is becoming increasingly difficult to cover rising food costs, housing expenses, the high cost of sport, and many people are stressed by the debt load they carry. Access to financial funds often proves too great of a temptation to resist, even though the individual knows it is wrong. Personal reasons. Stressors in an individual's life often become overwhelming, and having control over an organization's funds is a way to feel power and have a hold over the situation. Job frustrations. Feeling dissatisfaction or even defeated in one's job can lead to needing to establish control in other areas of this individual's life. The long and short of fraud and embezzlement is that it can put your organization's livelihood at risk. It's hard to understand how someone can put their livelihood, reputation, as well as the reputation of their family at risk by being dishonest and engaging in criminal activity. The embezzlement triangle lays out the three elements that are often used to substantiate the process of taking such huge risks. The element of need or desire for money or property, the pressure of having to make ends meet, live up to the Joneses, or simply cover everyday costs. The mental justification or rationalization that you're deserving or entitled to it. The opportunity or easy access to money or property. Many sport organizations don't have policies or are very lax in enforcing standards for volunteers, making it easy to bend rules for sake of convenience for volunteers. For example, it makes sense since everyone is a volunteer and time is at such a premium that when bills have to be paid and account invoices settled, it's often difficult for the treasurer to get the check signed by two authorized individuals. Often one person will sign a number of blank checks at a time. By doing this, the club is putting itself at risk for fraud, as the person holding the checks essentially now has carte blanche to write checks as they see fit. What leads to an opportunity? Inadequate segregation of duties where no one really knows who is responsible for what tasks they have. Unknown rules and consequences. Rapid board turnover where individuals aren't fully trained or stepping into a role in which they have no clear direction. Operating in crisis mode. Many sport organizations are financially struggling to survive from year to year and don't have a thorough and detailed budget process. Poor channels of communication between board members and board accountability policies. Lack of supervision amongst board members and staff. There are 3 types of fraud. Financial fraud. Inventory fraud, where material or goods are lost through pilferage, theft, and/or waste. Computerized fraud, such as using an electronic device to illicitly obtain money, property, or other information. This can be accomplished through input manipulation, program or data manipulation, or output manipulation. How does all of this apply to fundraising? Start by providing clear expectations to your board and families for fundraising. Let them know that transparency and accuracy is expected. When money raised is turned in, it must match the sales. For example, if you sell dinner and movie gift cards or scratch cards, the number of cards sold must equal the money turned into the club. From time to time, there will be extenuating circumstances, and at a hot dog sale, the 2 youth manning the sales table give back an incorrect amount of change, resulting in a cash under at the end of the day. Evaluate these situations on a case-by-case basis, because they do happen. Simple measures to implement in your sport organization are not allowing the treasurer to be a check signer. Have a copy of the bank statement given to the club president each month. Controls such as these make it more difficult for an individual to be tempted to embezzle funds if they know there are double-check systems in place. Do you know that a local organization had an individual that would insist on going into a locked room by themselves to count cash? The cash included the float, raffle ticket sales, and program sales. The organization did not have procedures in place in which each activity would have 2 individuals count the cash in a more open area before handing it over to another person for a double check. Setting up the opportunity to count cash without being observed by another person and without having anyone else count it prior to handing it in is simply an invitation to set your organization up for fraud and embezzlement. Do not leave your organization vulnerable like this. Remove all temptations to engage in fraud and have clear policies outlining cash and revenue collection strategies. Some simple methods your organization can implement to help avoid financial fraud are ensuring checks match bank statements. Make sure you reconcile bank and credit card accounts monthly. Match suppliers' invoices with payments. Do not pay for any expenses without appropriate documentation. Limit access to organization resources outside the regular business day. Take a regular inventory. Don't use cash boxes or have petty cash on hand without stringent guidelines. Ensure all volunteers have criminal record checks. Train employees and volunteers to be alert to warning signs of fraud and report unethical behavior. Make sure you have a system to report such matters. Conduct regular audits of your organization's financial records. Do this at least annually. You may be thinking everyone who works here is a really good person, but look at the history of people who've embezzled from nonprofits. They had all convinced themselves that they were just borrowing the money temporarily, making up in a small way for perceived underpaid work, or fulfilling the organization's mission. The mission is to help families, and this is helping my family. In other words, people who do bad things don't think of themselves as bad, and as a result, don't come across to others that way either. It hardly ever happens to nonprofits, so we don't have to worry that much. Actually, it's more common than you think because it's often kept quiet. Mrs. X is the most dedicated, honest, sweetest person I've ever met. Funny thing is that the only people who steal are people we trust. That's because if we didn't trust someone, we wouldn't give him or her the easy opportunity to steal. Opportunity and motivation will tempt even the most honest people. Simple details your sport organization may overlook, like not keeping tabs on fundraising inventory and products, allowing proceeds to be counted by one individual alone without having a double-check system, proper change is not given back, not having a double-check system. These things can open the doors to theft and fraud. Ensure implementing controls and reporting structures is a priority for your sport organization. If fraud is suspected, there are steps to take. Implement steps such as this into your sport organization policies and ensure it's in your handbook. Report irregularities by creating a system for volunteers and staff to anonymously report to the designated board representative or the board, if management is involved, any illegal or unethical actions they have witnessed or suspect. Use external auditors to investigate the situation. Prepare a code of conduct that expresses zero tolerance for unethical behavior and communicate it to all volunteers and employees. There are simple things you can do to make it easier for your volunteers when handling cash for a fundraiser. Practical tips include providing a calculator to remove the stress of calculating and counting exact change, or keeping a tracking sheet in your float so it's easily visible to volunteers what the opening balance and denominations of bills and changes. Provide Ziploc baggies to your young volunteers who collect cash for sales orders, gift cards, chocolate bar sales, or other collection strategies. Now, you can't control what other community groups are doing, but you can help support your own sport organization's volunteers. Always asking for volunteers, running too many fundraisers, expecting people to drop their plans last minute to help you out will kill parent and volunteer involvement, especially if the volunteer process is not streamlined and efficient. There is nothing that people dislike more than donating their time, only to have it used ineffectively or wasted. Most people and parents don't get involved in an organization to run it. They get involved to make a difference for themselves or their children, fully expecting to lend a hand from time to time. Be aware of the downward spiral effect where your club will get a reputation for doing nothing but asking for volunteers. You'll end up with a weak connection with parents and other members since they'll be trying to avoid being hooked into more commitments. Ultimately, your organization will weaken. On a large scale, financial and human resource goals won't be met, thereby expecting or requesting even more from its members. In this interview, Tanya speaks to the concept of requiring everyone to participate. What barriers to getting involved as a volunteer can you think of? Here are some examples. Having multiple kids in your family. The time involvement expected. The frequency, especially if you've got multiple children in your family. Volunteer requirements and expectations from your sport groups, any other groups you're involved with, schools, and church, as well as leveraging your own time so that you can get household chores done, grocery shopping, meals, laundry, cutting the grass, walking the dog, getting all that done every day. Sometimes there just isn't enough time in the day to be able to do it all. Here, Tanya talks about how people are pulled in so many directions at once. Your organization needs to be creative and find unique ways to break down these barriers. While many people are interested in committing themselves to helping out, they often stop coming to meetings or taking on tasks. Be sure to keep these individuals involved and feeling ownership over their roles and tasks so you can completely and effectively utilize their skills and talents. Ask them if there's a component of their role they would like to take on individually, or ask if they need to share some of the duties. Help them balance the workload. Most often, if a person is at a meeting or indicates interest, they'll respond positively if they're specifically asked. So next time, rather than mentioning in passing to another parent in the organization that you'd like their help, try asking specifically, "Hey, we're holding a car wash the last Saturday in May. Would you be available to help with the advertising of the event, as we know you've many connections throughout our community and feel you'd be a great person to help us out? We have a planning meeting next Wednesday at 7 p.m. and can fill you in on the details and pass over the information from last year's publicity volunteer." I think we all know too well what it feels like when there are just not enough hours in the day to get everything done. There are so many fantastic initiatives to get involved with, whether it's through work, your children's schools, your own sport organization, your children's sport organizations, local not-for-profit groups that you feel connection with. It's important to support each and every one of these endeavors. The intrinsic feelings of helping out individuals and organizations are extremely rewarding and help us feel good about our role in the community. But the next effect, people leave. So often we don't notice the burnout coming until it's too late, and what you're left with is either a very unhappy volunteer or a great volunteer who just quits. This is true whether it's for yourself or for another individual within your group. Again, recognize and respect that asking for someone's time to help your organization often adds extra stress and pressure to someone's daily schedule. Give as much notice as possible and share the workload as much as possible. Work to help the volunteers in your organization achieve that life balance between family, work, your sport organization, and any other organization they are involved with. Martina speaks to what an organization needs to be aware of when engaging volunteers and using their skills and experience. Strategies to avoid burnout. By staying on top of volunteers and making sure problems are identified and addressed early on will help combat burnout. When you see people starting to find it isn't fun or they're chronically worried or cranky, it may be time to offer extra help and lend a hand to share the workload. Helping the volunteers see the end result of efforts will connect them to the end purpose. The hours of help they put into the sport organization, the events and fundraisers to keep the organization going are then validated. Creating an achievable workload, breaking large tasks into manageable chunks, and even dividing up those tasks among several people to keep the job and responsibilities realistic. Check in with your volunteers regularly, as you never know what else is going on in their life. Maybe they have to work extra hours at work, are dealing with an ill parent, or simply need some unscheduled time to relax. Sometimes the life balance can get a little unbalanced, and what would normally be taken in stride is now causing extra stress because of external factors. Even though volunteers aren't paid and aren't generally bound by a contract and conditions like regular employment, it's always a great idea to allow volunteers the opportunity to take time off without feeling like they're letting the organization down or worrying someone else will take over their role. There's a lot of pride that goes into volunteer work, and respecting the time and dedication is one of the greatest appreciations you can provide. Thank you for taking part in the Lethbridge Sport Council's SCORE fundraising workshop today. We hope you're able to take the information and apply it to your fundraising planning. Remember, take each step one at a time, address things in a logical manner, and don't forget to have fun. Throw in some creativity and imagination to make your fundraiser original and one of a kind, and you'll be well on your way to success. The Lethbridge Sport Council also offers other SCORE workshops. Please contact our office or check online for the most up-to-date listing of courses available. If we don't currently have the topic you're looking for, we can direct you to other local agencies that offer similar material or to national organizations that offer online sport-related courses. We want to know what you think. With this course being an online course, we have the capabilities to modify and adjust the course content to ensure we're providing the most up-to-date information for you. We want your opinion, thoughts, and suggestions. Please follow the link and provide us with course feedback, as this will help us fine-tune this Fundraising 101 course, as well as guide us as we develop and produce future courses and workshops. The Lethbridge Sport Council works hard to connect you with the resources and information you need so Lethbridge can be stronger together in sport. We offer an array of services, including one-on-one consultations to develop a strategy for your individual sport organization, offering promotional and advertising opportunities to an in-house resource library and toolkits. We work with sport groups to put together bid packages to host tournaments and competitions, as well as stay involved in sport tourism to increase and optimize the economic benefit of hosting sport events in Lethbridge. Consultations to develop a strategy for your individual sport organization, please do so that you can advertising opportunities to an in-house resource library and toolkits, as well as provincial and national initiatives and announcements to put together bid packages to host tournaments and competitions once a month, as well as stay involved in sport tourism to increase and optimize the economic benefit. So please forward us your email address and we'll add you to our distribution list so you don't miss out on important information. You can like our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/Lethbridge Sport. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/Lethbridge Sport. And check our website frequently as we keep it up to date with fresh information. That address is www.lethbridgesportcouncil.ca. Thank you again for participating in the Lethbridge Sport Council's SCORE workshop on fundraising. We hope you found it informative. If you would like further information or suggestions on where to take your sport organization from here, please contact us at info@lethbridgesportcouncil.ca or 403-320-9371, and we'd be happy to help. We'd like to extend a huge thank you to the following individuals: Dick Larson, Community Development Officer with the Province of Alberta; Jim McNally from the Commercial Factory; Laurie Harrison, Martina Emmerd, and Tanya Wolford. We couldn't have done it without you.